Ready?
Mr. Kluskevich.
Here.
Mr. Lister.
Here.
Mr. Rittinger.
Here.
Ms. Reed.
Here.
Ms. Willenbecker.
Here.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Lloyd is not here.
Okay, we'll start off with a presentation on our park master site plan. With this, again, tonight we have Tracy Strickland, like the HRG, who will go over that with us briefly.
Great, thank you everyone. It's good to be back here tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to share the progress on the master site plan with you all and a few of those changes that we made since you saw it last time. We'll go to the next slide. Or, yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
no, that's okay.
It's
There you go.
too far.
No, that's fine. We
That's
can
good.
start right there. That's just a quick refresher of the area that we developed the master site plan for around the pool and the entire open space property around it. The goal being, again, a high-level master site plan for it that will offer a new experience to the community today and for years into the future. And then just highlighting the fact that we keep calling it the former pool property, but maybe one day there will be a new name for the project site as well. Just wanted to touch base again really briefly that we did not just show up and put an idea on paper. We actually did a number of activities for public engagement, having steering committee meetings. We did review the findings from the broader park recreation and open space plan that you all undertook and reviewed the results from public input events during that process. We did actually host an online citizen survey for several weeks and then tallied those results. And we had a lot of fun at the craft fair back in June with our pop-up engagement stations, which actually allowed both like non-residents and visitors as well as your residents to come up and speak to us and give us their ideas. And then very recently, not all that long ago, a few weeks ago, we were here and we did a public presentation of this concept at that time. So from all of that input, again, just again stating that we developed what we call a designer's checklist, which features a lot of the priority items that we heard during all of that public engagement and the steering committee meetings and our own site visits to the park. So you'll see that one of the primary features of the design will be an accessible walking path throughout the entire park site, as well as a community event space. It does not have to be huge. It can be a small event, but we have a dedicated space for that. We did make room for educational signage and spaces for historical sculptures. And because there was still a lot of interest from the community in some kind of water-based feature in the park, even if it's not the pool, you'll see that we do find a home for what we like to call misting poles on the property that can be operated in the summertime. So here's, the rest of the checklist goes everything from pavilions to a nature playground to outdoor exercise stations so that this park can be used by everyone, all age ranges, all ability levels, resident and non-resident alike. If you hear me say any specific words as I describe the plan to you, here are some quick reference images for what I mean. So in the upper left corner is what I'm talking about when I say outdoor exercise stations. The upper picture in the middle, we talk about nature playground. We really do mean that outside of maybe one or two pieces that might be prefabricated from a manufacturer, the intent is to actually use natural materials where appropriate. In the upper right, we do talk about things like pollinator gardens and low-mow zones and things like that so that we can pull more of that space where it's not needed to be lawn away from having to mow the lawn every single week to reduce that maintenance. In the lower left is the example of the misting poles. So it is not a splash pad per se, but it does offer a misting water-based feature in the park on those very hot days. And then in the winter time, like right now, it can still be a unique sculptural element in the park. Down in the bottom middle would be activities for kind of older kids, possibly tweens and teens who might be looking for more challenging play equipment to be on. And then on the lower right is the type of asphalt walking trail surface. And where we come up, where the trail comes close to the edge of Spatera Creek is where we think we might need some kind of just basic safety fencing so people don't just tumble down the hill. Yes, ma'am.
How, what do you have for differently abled people?
Well, we've got, as you see, right, actually, it's a great question and good timing right here. So when we talk particularly about the children, I'll start with that. We do have everything from an active zip line and climbing boulders to integrated inclusive play and play zones that could be added into the nature play space so that we can do that for everybody. And then depending on what ultimate selections are made, well, I'll show you an area in the master site plan for those outdoor exercise stations. There are a lot of manufacturers who offer options that are also for people who might be in a wheelchair or in a walker, or even who just want a piece of equipment that helps them with their balance. So those final selections have not yet been made. That would happen in the next stage of design, but we would make sure that we've got something for everybody.
That's the one.
One, okay.
Okay, here we go. All right, I'm gonna use my laser pointer. Oh, it's working great. So I'll direct everyone's attention to the middle of the plan, in the big gray area, is obviously the parking lot that's there now, which we would propose would remain and simply be resurfaced and restriped with the correct number of accessible parking spaces and signs placed right in the middle of it. And then at the entrance to the park, we're suggesting 2 new identification signs into the park so that, you know, traffic coming from either direction has an opportunity to see it and turn into the park. We are also proposing to keep the pool building that's there now, with the idea that at some point in the future, if appropriate, it could be assessed for its ability to be reused, repurposed, and used maybe less as a pool house, obviously, and more like a public restroom, water bottle filling station, that sort of kind of space. The areas in the lighter gray, excuse me, that lead from the parking lot would be accessibly paved or trail surface aggregate trail system and plaza spaces around the building. And the idea here is that we would have an entire loop trail system all the way around the park, all the way across to the other area where it's mostly lawn right now, but all the way down and around and over and back again. So on the left-hand side, what you see here is that central community lawn space. That could be everything from tossing a frisbee to putting out picnic blankets, or even bringing chairs and lunches and snacks. And on the end of that oval lawn area, we're thinking that it would be a great spot to have a small band shell or half hexagon pavilion style structure that serves as a pavilion most of the time, but could also double as a small space for a small music group or a movie night or something like that, to expand the programming opportunity for the community, as well as expand rental opportunities as well. The pink spaces in between are meant to be native, very low maintenance ground cover zones, again trying to take away from having to mow everything all the time. And then these smaller symbols that look kind of like hexagons are intended to be new gazebos added into some of these planting pockets across this area. So that, again, it can expand birthday party rentals, scouts opportunities, outdoor educational opportunities, and that sort of experience. And then we also have a smaller pavilion off to the upper left side of the park for that same reason, set away from the larger pavilion. So again, everyone can come and walk and explore, and have benches in the park area, and the little orange symbols are intended to be places for historical sculpture, so that the history of the site could be celebrated through an experience in the park itself. So it can have some signage, maybe it's an old water pump, maybe it's an old homage to the canal, something like that. That is what is intended for that. In between the big oval lawn area, we have a smaller area. We tried to have some designated spaces for stormwater management rain gardens. And based on the input we heard at the last meeting, the idea might be to also take advantage of some views to the creek through some elevated pier overlook zones that could act like decking, that we don't have to get down to the water's edge necessarily, but can actually give an opportunity to step off the trail and onto an elevated deck with railing kind of like this and overlook the actual creek itself. So you'll see there's a smaller one here on the left side of the plan. And then if we followed the trail around, like we're going back towards the parking lot, we would go past the parking lot, past another historical sculpture, and on the right-hand side of the plan, where we probably have potential for an even bigger view, we've proposed an even larger elevated deck or pier overlook zone. And again, that's big enough not only to have the railings, but to have some permanent benches added there too. The big feature on the right-hand side is that nature play zone, where we would come in and provide a different range of equipment, including ADA and excessive equipment, so we could provide more challenging activities for slightly older kids who sometimes get overlooked by traditional playgrounds, but also have some logs and boulders and climbing ropes and tumble hills with slides set into them. It gives a different sense of a destination in this particular park like this. And then to provide some seating, we have some low-cut stone walls in some locations along the curves, as well as a short range of like an overhead pergola that caregivers and visitors could sit under if they're watching the kids play in the nature play area. Now, if you walked all the way along the trail to the upper right and around, as though you were going to the property adjacent to the park site itself, this area right here is where we've put a grouping of the outdoor fitness stations. And again, depending on what final selections are made in the future, several of those pieces can also be accessible for folks who need that, who might have some mobility challenges and things like that. But we also do put a small spur connection of the trail here as well, thinking ahead to this potential waterfront trail project that is being talked about right now. Then you can either loop around inside the nature play space or follow the trail around the outdoor fitness stations through a little short height native pollinator meadow zone, that's what that yellow represents, and loop all the way back around the nature play zone, like you're coming back to the parking lot. And then this little oval of blue here is the potential location for the misting poles and the safety surfacing that would go with it. And again, the idea too would be to keep as many of the trees that are out there now and add a few more to put some shade on the parking lot, and or add a few more trees around the whole property to help nestle some of the gazebos and the pavilions and the individual gathering spaces into the park to help it feel a little more protected from the hot sun. We did also hear there was interest in having a bike rack, so we have some bicycle parking here near the building. We also added a water bottle filling station on this side of the entrance where we would have water for the misting poles. That way, if it's not incorporated into the building, you could still have that. And then in anticipation of the possibility, just the possibility, that people might one day have permission to walk dogs here, we did put in here and into the cost opinion a pet waste station. And we know that's a decision to be made later because right now the dogs are not permitted in parks. But we're finding in many communities as we begin to expand trail networks inside these types of recreation spaces, plan ahead because oftentimes folks start to ask for it. So, okay, next slide. And we can come back to this after we do the initial phasing. We kept incredibly simple right now. This does not mean you have to do it this way or only do 2 phases. But we just kept it really simple in that priority 1 might be, just might be, establishing the community lawn and the first series of the trail network to the left side of the parking lot and our first overlook and test it out and see how people respond to it. And then phase 2 could potentially be the nature play zone, the larger pier overlook, the outdoor exercise area, and the rest of the trail system with the misting poles around that. Okay. Always change your mind or flip them or break these in 2 smaller sub-phases. We're fine with that, but we wanted to start somewhere with that. And then I think last but not least, yeah, there's our reference imagery down there. And then if you go, I think it's the next slide. Yeah. So planning level cost opinions all in because of the nature of the trail and all of the structures, plus the pier overlooks and the stormwater management for the trail system, if you did it all, the price tag could be between 2.1 and 2.3 million, especially with the nature play and all the potential items that would go into that. Phase one, on average, would be just slightly less than half that, and phase two would be just slightly more than half that. Now, again, this is a planning level cost opinion. It's a very high level estimate based on the things we've shown right now, and it can change if you decide that some things are a greater priority than others, and we simplify the plan, take some elements out, that sort of thing. And, like I said, it's just dependent on the final decisions later on. And then again, a master site plan is not yet a full set of construction drawings, so detailed engineering design, grading, erosion and sediment control, and things like that have not yet been developed. So just something to keep in mind. And that's it. So I'm happy to go back to the plan if anyone has any other questions or would like me to point at anything. Yeah, it's very high level. Does not mean you are obligated to do any or part of it, but it's just a roadmap for the future.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
The last slide there, you mentioned about pricing.
Yes.
You brought up stormwater management.
Yes.
Is that based on the existing stormwater management guidelines the borough has on the books?
Well, again, we haven't done the deep dive into it yet, but the assumption is that, yeah, we would follow those parameters and we would treat any new impervious runoff that could be generated by the trail or any of those areas where we kind of have the gazebos and the pavilions and things like that.
Without having MPI.
Yeah.
So we got the full.
And several years ago, the borough revised our stormwater management ordinance. And I find it very, it's tough. I know just from my low level residential build, the hoops that I had to go through stormwater management. And I'm wondering if that's something the borough looks at as a whole, does it help decrease the price of that project?
It depends too. I think it could, because if we take advantage of any of these pockets of planting zone right here where we have softscape, I think that those are great opportunities to do that, and not have to do expensive underground detention systems and things like that. And those-
I know what I'm spending on just a small residential site.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought.
And you saw some of my plans, and it's a lot.
Yes, it's the trend of the ordinances nowadays.
So I think it's something even outside of this project and how it could save the taxpayers money. I think it's a good thing to look at globally, just for our residents in general.
Yeah, and anything from rain gardens to rain barrels can make a difference. And maybe there's an opportunity to even test out some porous pavement if appropriate, if the soils support that in some of these locations. And oftentimes the nature play zones and playground zones have drainage systems underneath them that take the stormwater right there, and you don't have to tie it into your storm system.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Was there any consideration given to the Historical Society for their site with the old fort and the band hall incorporation into that area?
Into the area, we thought one of the things we could do with that is with those historical sculptural elements that I don't know if you even have any that have been salvaged and preserved that could become almost art pieces in the park. But for now, what we decided was we'll look like that. So if you look right here, it might be hard to see, but we do show a potential trail connection to the property. And then the thought process is because, again, we didn't want to design outside of this property, we might tackle that as a separate project in the future. But yeah, we do think it would be great if we could pull some of those elements or materials or anything that might be in storage somewhere and bring it in
Or
literally
even
to
that's gonna
daylight.
make a longer walking trail.
It could be, we completely agree. Yeah, that could be a great offshoot project from this over there. Listen.
So, the last meeting that you were here, you said about grant money
Mhm.
from DCNR.
Yeah,
Do the grants come from federal or state funding?
DCNR would be state. And we're actually gonna be meeting with several of them next week to decide and or try to work out maybe a potential funding strategy and path forward for this.
And as far as the ADA compliant equipment, that's gonna be up to the counselors to decide what to put in there.
Ultimately, we would like to work with them to do that at that next stage of design, because it could be everything from the type of equipment, the manufacturer, if they're co-stars, you can save money if you do a cooperative purchasing program, that sort of thing. How many pieces of equipment, maybe they should all be accessible or some are accessible, so we can sort that out later in the next stage.
Because a lot of the parks in the area don't have ADA
I know,
compliant.
we would love, I think between.
Even the ones they just redid don't have
Right.
it.
Right, so between that and the nature play, that makes this park possibly a unique destination in the community for residents and visitors alike. That's the hope.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Tracy,
Yes.
is it possible?
Mhm.
I mean, we have experience from another project on federal funding, which was Hopper Park. That when we submit, if we get to that point where we kind of goes through it, when we submit the DC, that they could possibly kick it over to federal funds.
Well, that was my question,
Right.
because right now the federal grants are on hold.
Right. They are, but there are some federal grants that have already been issued, like Middletown Streets is project. And we have been told unaffected by that. Money that's already out the door is unaffected. But depending on the timing of this, if that were to be lifted at some point, we know from the past that when we wanted a bigger chunk of money in grant funds through DCNR, they have another avenue to get large, they did have another avenue to get larger sources of funds with federal dollars.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna be something that we make sure we definitely talk with Lori about when we meet with her. If it's available, depending on the strings attached to it, it's always worth looking into it.
The council presses forward, the next step is to talk about, what type of funding is out there. Other than DCNR, there might be some things through DCED, Rails and Trails people, and how can we get this where, we get it as close to, if not fully funded, close to fully funded as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, of course, the conversation that we know is the next step.
Okay?
Okay, any other thoughts, or we good? Okay? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'd like to report on our last executive session. We discussed real estate and matters of litigation. Now is the time of public comment on agenda items.
Can I talk about the park, since it was on the agenda?
You want me to stay?
No, this isn't for you.
Oh, okay. Have a good night, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Don't know 123 State Street. So the reason I asked her about the federal funding, if we have to match anything or we have to, where is it coming from? Where are we getting it from to fund this? Is it in the budget this year? Was it budgeted for this year? So we don't know where
So we're
getting.
this is what we're doing, the scope and scale of this project, and you can see up there in bold black lines it says concept.
Right.
So this is in no way a final design, and so on February 27th, with DCNR, our engineers, staff, and the councilors who've been sitting on the park committee are gonna meet and start addressing that very question. So we don't have an answer right now, because we need to sit down and look at a full funding plan opportunity. Maybe it's phase one and phase two. Maybe we try to get it all at one point, because phase two gets more expensive the further it's kicked down the street. So if you wanna hold on to that question, we will have an answer, but there is no answer tonight.
Yeah, and that's my concern. I know there's not any answer. I know it's a concept. But in the concept, you also have to realize where you're taking that money, because as we know, again, our residents are seeing an increase in their water sewer, they're seeing an increase in their taxes, in their county taxes. I don't wanna see our taxes increase for something like this. And I know that our taxes are gonna have to increase as of next year. I know that because we didn't do it this
Which does not
year.
have anything to do with the park.
I know, but
Just wanna make.
I just wanna make sure that it's in the budget somewhere, and I wanted to ask if it was in the budget for this year.
Right now, our intention is not to load the budget up with park costs.
Yeah, to answer your question, this, if we were to get a percentage of funding from somebody, from the numbers you saw,
Right,
the balance that we would have is not in the budget, it could result in the whole thing being paid. But, the hope is, and we've been given some hopeful direction, but we won't know for sure. And like you addressed, some things have changed in the administration. Maybe federal dollars we've already get, we don't know. But we're going to look at what other avenues, what other agencies there are that would fund this sort of thing. And when you get into a trail system or a green trail system, it opens up doors to some other places, because a lot of this is trails and paving. So, like Alan said, we have to bring this part of you to everybody now, or else, to see if people on board, or else there's no sense in even talking, sitting down and talking about funding.
right, I understand, but as a citizen, I also wanna know where the money's coming from. And that wasn't discussed either as to where we were gonna look for the money, and I just wanna know where it's gonna come from.
Yeah.
The other thing, when I asked her about the ADA complaint, and I know the council has to choose those, again, all of the other new parks that we put in, there's no ADA compliant except for Huffer, and that has one. I'm asking that when you do this down here, if you're gonna make this different than Huffer Park, you put a lot more ADA compliant equipment down there, because Oak Hills doesn't have anything, this one over here doesn't have anything, Huffer Park has one. You need something for them as well. So if we're gonna sit down and we're gonna spend this money, let's make it different than Huffer Park by adding some more ADA so that maybe your different people can come to this park.
Yeah, that, when you go for grant money outgoing, that's a bigger issue than it was several years ago. So, yeah, we will have to look at that with all the new parks.
Yeah.
So that was why in both presentations, I brought it up twice, and I'm like, it's gotta be there.
Well, I brought it up with Huffer Park and we got one.
Well, it's gonna have to happen.
Oh. Also, I noticed that on the plan that I got, the price was 1.9 to 2.1. Now it's up to 2.1 to 2.3.
We added the overlays to the creek.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no other public comment, we'll move on to item number 1.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve council meeting minutes for February 4th, 2025 meeting as submitted?
So moved.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 2.
Do I have a motion to approve the payment of bills as shown on the accounts payable list dated February 12th, 2025, which is for the period of January 31, 2025 through February 12th, 2025, and to ratify the approval of those bills already paid and to authorize the appropriate officials to take the required actions to make those payments?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 3.
Item number 3 is the Over Deer Park, and you'll see in our vacant map report that, in case you're wondering why we're paying the bill, the equipment has been ordered in hand by the contractor. In fact, they will start construction this weekend. So, with that, do I have a motion to approve payment number 1 to Dutton Land Construction in the amount of $43,376.51, as recommended by HRG to compensate for the stored materials related to playground equipment and structures for the Over Deer Park.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4.
Do I have a motion to approve payment number 6 to Hayden Power Group, which is invoice number 08015, in the amount of $273,232.03, recommended by Asplund Engineering Services for construction work on the Spruce Street electrical substation.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5,
Item number 5, do we have a motion to adopt resolution 2025 approving the temporary extension of the Royalton Sewage Treatment Agreement until June 30th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6,
Item number 6, we're gonna ask you to table that, item because, we got some new information, our attorney, regarding the, title insurance, and we're gonna have to take a new approach to resolving that agreement, so we don't have that, all those documents in hand right now, so we can table that for our next business, or workshop meeting.
item number 7, managers report.
Item number 1, of course, we already presented that, so you know what that is about. Item number 2 on my report is a special request application for the 50th Annual Arts and Crafts Fair from the Historical Society for their permission to use Hopper Park on June 12th and 13th. The craft fair will be held on June 14th at 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with cleanup on June 14th. There will be food trucks at that event. And we put that on the business meeting agenda next month for your vote. Item number 3, we just did, basically, we just passed that resolution. And item number 4, Dauphin County is in the process of updating its hazard mitigation plan to reduce the risk of natural disasters and improve community resilience. We have provided a draft plan, will provide a draft plan for March 3rd at 1 p.m. at South Hanover Township Building. If anybody in the public wants to go, you can go to the county website and register for that. It'll be at 1 p.m. South Hanover Township Municipal Building. And at 6 p.m. they'll hold one at Dauphin County Department of Public Safety in Harrisburg. Number 5, some of the council members here were involved with a meet and greet with new State Senator Patty Kim, and they have requested some space here at Borough Hall once a month for 2 hours for a little pop-up satellite office for the residents. And staff has agreed to that. I want to make everybody aware of that. That hasn't started yet, but some representatives for our office will be meeting with me, and we're going to make some space available like we did for Senator John DeSanto when he was in that position. Item number 6 on my report is information on the final annual recovery report dated February 10th, 2025, which relates to the Middle County concession agreement. And it specifically notes the change in water and sewer rates for 2025. In aggregate, those changes resulted in a tariff increase of 7.9%. Although, in the context of the notice of dispute between the borough and the joint venture, the over the 15% management fee, the increase was reduced to 7.7% for an interim period until the resolution of that dispute. A couple things that I added onto my report that you probably don't see on yours, council, that came in past the writing of my report. And one is a special request application received from the Dauphin County Nerf Club for the use of the field along Mill Street between the entrance to Upper Park and the bridge to Royalton from noon to 5 p.m. For Saturdays from March 29, April 26, May 24, June 28, July 26, August 30, September 27, October 18, with rain dates on the following Sunday as been done in previous years. I'd like to have your permission to add that to the agenda. This is the agenda for March 4th for a vote approved. The last thing that I have is we received a special event application from our new business that's moving into town here called I believe it's pronouncing this right, Bodie Yoga and Wellness. They're gonna be on South Union Street downtown here, and they're gonna have a grand opening on March 8th. And they have invited council or members of council, or any member of council or mayor to cut the ribbon. I have one council president, James Miller, has agreed to attend that event. But during that event, they want to have a couple of trucks involved. One is a food truck, a coffee truck, and the other is a flower truck that's coming to the grand opening. They want to park them on Union Street in front of their business. So as part of their special event request, we require, well, as part of food trucks, we require special event request from the council to have food trucks according to our ordinance. So we'd like to have, know if you would like to vote on that tonight because of the timing, or if you want to go to March 4th, put it on the business agenda. If anybody's had a chance to look at it, if you haven't and you want to put it on the agenda before, that's fine. If you want to take a vote tonight, it gives the business a little more time to know whether or not you are on board.
Can we do that? It's not on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I don't have one. We're gonna have to go.
Ken, remember a couple meetings ago we discussed that letter that comes from Veolia for the extra insurance?
Yeah.
I apologize, I have it, and they changed it. And it was a little weird at the timing, but they have since changed it. That was only a month or so ago when we brought that up here. And I still don't think it's fair.
Yeah, what's on the website is different than the letter.
Yeah, the new letter has some different coloring, and they changed the graphic on the back. It still references that 26-foot or greater threshold. I just don't think that that's clear to residents, especially people who may not be paying attention to a double-sided letter. So I'll bring them to the next meeting.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Give me that, I'll have a copy of it. And I'll send it to them, because I think their website, that's something different.
Yeah. I think there are people in this town that are paying for that insurance that even if something happened, they would be told it's not covered. So that should be rectified. I can even just bring the letters to you before the next meeting.
Okay, appreciate it.
Excuse me, Ken, may I ask, can this be put on tonight's agenda? Did we
No.
vote to put it on?
No,
Okay.
only if it was an emergency. Okay, anything else? That's all I have. No, we can move on to the next.
Next board would be codes.
Good evening. If you look at my report here, just some statistics, about 60 open violations. We're back to our normal average there. 20 rental complaints and 9 property complaints for January. And to number 3, there is a handicap parking request that is attached for you to review. The codes department recommends that that gets put on the next agenda for approval there. And number 4 attached, per your request, the draft rental ordinance is in place for you to review if there are any questions. We have reduced that to more specific rental property concerns than more of it being a property maintenance.
Jason, explain what the licensing will cover.
The licensing fees are a yearly fee that cover the admin costs, the postings, mailings, checkups, follow-ups, potential court attendance by the codes department. So that's what that fee would cover. And we would have to discuss what that amount would be as a whole and ensure that the rental ordinance does cover such fees. The average fee for that has been around $55 to $70 a year per unit.
Per unit?
Per unit.
I'm sorry, Jason, it covers mailings, court attendance.
Yeah, it is basically all the code's costs of going through the enforcement process.
But you listed mailings, court attendance, I missed something. Just check.
Mailings, court attendance, schedulings, visits.
Thank you.
That's the biggest costs.
And we're gonna recommend the handicap parking, right?
That'll be put on the next agenda, yes.
Okay. And you've been working with Jim Diamond on this draft, right?
Not at this point. We as a staff have been discussing and reducing per council's request to get this fine-tuned for
So you and
Ken and staff members
Okay.
of the borough. Any other questions with the draft ordinance? Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, if there aren't any, that's what we would do at the next step too.
Okay.
Number 5, I have for review and a request for our solicitor to also review before we move forward is a non-conversion agreement. This is for properties that are in floodplain areas. If they have any living space at the bottom base level that's in a flood zone, they either would have to raise the whole property up if there was a disaster at 50%, or there is an agreement to have it not converted as living space and solely as storage. And this agreement helps protect the borough from any audits or mishaps that FEMA may see. And if there was living space in there, this protects us from a resident doing that.
It's important, we felt important for you to know what this really means to a resident who still has a house in floodplain, but they receive substantial damage. This requires them to have, if they're not gonna get money to tear it down and move on, it's not conversion. And I'll make a house.
I wondered what that meant.
So 1.5 feet above the floodplain, or make that space
Storage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can actually opine a little bit on this. I previously owned a property in the city of Harrisburg that's in the floodplain, and it had gone through a fire which considered more than 50% of the property value. So if the property's valued $200,000, and you have $101,000 worth of damage, you're now at 50% or more. I had to do extensive engineering, and I substantially had to bring probably 50 triaxles of stone and fill in the lowest level. So FEMA considers the lowest level is the first floor, which in this case was the basement. I had to fill that in with stone the whole way up and install engineered floodgates to be able to renovate my property, bring it back. And it is a very heavy burden. There's lots of engineering, lots of planning. And literally when I talked to FEMA, it was raise it, lower it, or raise it, move it, or demo it. I mean, raise it, move it, or demo it. So it is a very tall order. and we have a lot of structures in the borough of Middletown.
If you've never heard about it before, it shocks you when
I had no idea. I literally just, I was in the middle of construction, I received a notification from the city, and I was clueless. That is a very serious, and it's a good thing that we notify everybody and everybody understands it, but it's real. And I've been down there, I've been through it.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, appreciate that. So this is basically a FEMA initiative for all municipalities to have some sort of a plan in place. And these templates were provided by FEMA, and I've edited it to accommodate the borough of Middletown.
And Jason, we recently had a fire in the flood zone in the borough of Middletown on View Avenue. And I'm sure they're doing some of this.
Yeah, this is where we're at, which is what brings the attention.
I figured that's probably what started bringing it to light.
Yeah, it was built in the 80s before things were put into place. And now that this has occurred, they have to be up to the current standards.
So they did have 50%. Yeah, I didn't know.
Any questions with that? If not, I would recommend to allow our solicitor to review that for us to get that in the books and approved. All right. And then the last couple things, or we just continue to do our thing? Any questions? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9, electric.
Not a lot on the points of interest of change, other than Spruce Street is still offline. We did not put it back online even through the real cold snap we had, and we monitored it very closely, and everything held up great, having circuits tied together. So it was more of a trial for us, to look at some options that we might have down the road, with keeping circuits together and possibly, eliminating some other substations. But anyways, the update on the project is both transformers are on the pads. Virginia came in and did the build outs on the transformers, so all the radiators are on, the oil's in, all the testing has been done accordingly. Foundations for the control building is dug, and they are now piping in all the conduits over to the control building. Conduits everywhere and throughout there. So this is one of the reasons why we're keeping Spruce Street off, because rather than us keep going out and taking a circuit or two down every other day for them to dig out, or risking someone getting injured by hitting a live line that's above, we're just keeping everything offline right now and keeping everything tied into one substation. The block for the control building has been ordered. Like I said, the foundation has been dug. So I look for that building to go up rather quick. The only thing that they're waiting on now is we have to pick a color for the roof, which is no big deal. But other than that, it's moving right along. There were no outages since the last report. Everything held up great, even in our windy estates here, which was very testimonial to our tree trimming and the maintenance that's been done on the lines. So, do you have any questions?
The governor, filed a lawsuit. Right?
Not against me.
No. Filed a lawsuit with PJM, right? Did anything ever come about from that?
Not that I know of.
And we didn't,
We haven't really heard anything yet, but I would expect you're gonna start to see some things because June's right around the corner. So, no, we have not heard anything.
okay.
I can't give really any updates without knowing.
You didn't get anything yet?
We got nothing from our consultants either,
Okay.
unless Ken, you heard something recently.
No, typically when a lawsuit's filed, it takes some time.
It takes a
Because
long
there
time.
are a number of steps that happen before they even, get the mediation. I know that, I think,
Also,
somebody joined that lawsuit or?
Correct.
Right. No, a couple other agencies joined that lawsuit, that's the only new issue.
What, New Jersey's joined it too?
Not New Jersey.
Okay.
and I've read that there might have been a little bit backpedaling with the PJM, but I'm not sure to what extent, so I can't really speak for that. So we'll see.
There are talks that are going to take place.
Yeah. When politics is involved with it, it's who knows what's gonna happen. I believe something's still gonna happen, but to what extent, I'm not sure yet for this year. You might see a lull and maybe something happen next year. A little increase this year and a bigger one next year. But
Well, let's hope not. Hope that,
and we are still looking. AMP Ohio is in the process of coming out here in the next month and looking at some possible diesel or natural gas generation.
Really?
So, yeah, they were in here once, just doing the general survey of the area, and maybe some peakers and stuff, but,
We're still waiting on review to get a response from the
and GDS, correct, we are waiting for GDS to look at doing this on our own. So, GDS is kind of working on a couple little projects for us. One, yes, one is looking at our rates, with what's coming up.
Okay.
And also how to, kind of help out the rates with some of these projects that we needed. Either buying to them or do them ourselves.
All right.
Good. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Item number 10, finance.
Okay, Sally's not here tonight, she had, personal business to deal with, so I, would direct you to look at second page and see the, 2025 grant update that she had. And, as I spoke earlier, there is a latest update that, Sally points out here. We did get a response back from the state, and they checked with the federal folks and said that our grant money for Lee Wall Street streetscape is already delivered, sealed. So the pencils down that President Trump order does not affect our Lee Wall Street streetscape. It does not. So we can move forward with our plan. However, we don't expect to see construction on that for some time, probably next year. We're still, we just finished getting the approval from the state on the engineer for that streetscape project, and it will be construction. So we go through an RFP, an RFQ process, and I think 5 Norris staffers participated in the review of all the submittals from different engineering. They were averaged, produced to the state looked at, and then the state actually makes the selection based on the information. So that's the update. All right, the other thing I want to point out on page 2 there is the third-party tax collections. Sally's asking for an action item there on March 4th. We did receive the 2 quotes for tax collectors, one from Keystone and the other from Berkheimer. We're issuing bills in the first week of July. Berkheimer came in significantly lower, and they're the group that we recommend them to do our third party. We'll have them March 4th agenda for you. And that's all she has.
Item number 11, fire department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You all should have received the report that we printed out on the total expenses for 2024. The cover letter pretty much explains the amount of operating funds that we expended. The estimation was $29,508. The fire department supplemented the operation and maintenance portion of it for a total of $38,749. This mostly was caused by catastrophic failure of major components and some of them that fell out of the life cycle that we weren't anticipating. The going into this year with what we're facing with the electric, the water, and the sewer, and we've already had a major component failure that we had to repair, so we're probably going to wind up supplementing again in 2025 from the fire department's general fund. Going forward, we'd like to present, this will probably be at the April workshop, a presentation on vehicle replacement. One of the things that has come to mind, if you're familiar with our aerial apparatus that we have, the hydraulic system on that vehicle was remounted from a 1989 vehicle, and we saved some $600,000 or $700,000 doing that. There was recently a similar unit which was new from bumper to bumper, which the price tag was $2.9 million for that vehicle. So when it comes time to look at replacement, we're going to have to see if the boom and the hydraulics on that is compatible for a second remount, for a third service life. And hopefully, if it's possible, that would bring the cost down. And again, hopefully we'll have that ready for you in April. On the good news is, yesterday we received our state grant for the HVAC equipment. That equipment, the down payment for the equipment will be made tomorrow. The contract signed so that the equipment can be ordered. Questions, comments, concerns?
I actually have a question for Mr. Clark here. The borough-owned fire truck, is it still sitting? Did we sell it yet?
We did not. They had a bite and they were supposed to come look and then they did, but then we didn't hear anything, so we must have backed out.
Still collecting dust?
It's still.
Thank you.
Jim, may I ask, how does that assessment occur for the hydraulics? Do you use a third party?
Oh, yeah.
Who comes in? Yeah.
It's tested annually by a third party. If to do the remount, especially now that the equipment would be in the 40 to 45-year-old range, it is completely disassembled. It's done non-destructive testing on all the welds. A lot of the components are replaced just because they're old, and then it's retested.
I see.
But if it could be remounted, and we're not even talking about that yet, but this is just a piece of information. If it could be remounted, we'd probably be saving another $500,000 if we could remount the equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Todd,
Yes,
I owe you some money.
for what?
I missed copies and, Bruno.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Along those lines, Bruno's, was scheduled and then it was rescheduled, but Old Man Winter, decided that he wants to have it, so we canceled that for now. We will be back there in May. The Hop Yard is the next one on March 13th. That's a Thursday.
I thought you did Woodland this week.
We were gonna, but the weather screwed everything up.
Oh, okay.
And then, you should have all got invitations for our annual banquet on March 22nd. And that's all that I have for now, unless anybody has anything.
So you didn't have one this week,
No,
so I only missed a couple.
correct, but you still owe money.
My question was, how did you make out a company's?
I believe it was around $1,000 or so. So that's, if we can do that every month, I mean, it didn't happen in February, but if we can do that, that's an additional, $11,000, $12,000 a year. I don't know if that'll happen every month, but that helped the business and it helps the fire department, so,
Yeah.
All right, come see me tomorrow.
thank you.
Item number 12, highway.
Good evening. Not really too much on here, this evening. First item, you saw our stormwater fee for Lower Sweater Township is increasing from $1,260 a year to $1,800 a year. That is already in place. They increased that for 2025. So it went up from $7 to $10, which is a fairly significant increase. Second item, hauled out a lot of material from Woody Waste, 443 tons plus 94.5 tons of leaves. The generator project for Main Street Gym has been completed. The Hopper Pavilion door replacement and the electric service panel have been completed. We're just awaiting the inspector to come and sign off on the electric panel for down there. And the HVAC unit for this portion of the building has been replaced as well. We replaced one of our full-time maintenance workers who had resigned. New fellow John started last week. And as Ken noted, depending on when you got here today, you may have seen the silt sock over at Overdeer. They will be starting Overdeer this week. They will be removing the equipment that is in there, and they will be starting to do their grading and site preparation for that. I'm gonna ask them to fence that, or we will fence it off, one or the other, so that people just don't stumble over what is there. The timeline for the equipment is still mid-March-ish, hopefully, and completion is anticipated for early May. So it's moving along.
Were we able to get a sign up with the?
I did not yet. I'm gonna have to use the plan sheet. I don't really have any good renderings. We didn't get a rendering for that, so I'll have the guys make that this week.
Okay. And the doors at Hopper Park look fantastic.
Thank you. There's gonna be a large painting party at some point when the weather finally breaks. There's a lot of doors to paint. But yes, they should last us the rest of,
Yeah, they all look good. I
Hopefully
walked the
20
whole way
years.
around the building and looked at them.
What color?
they're a primer gray,
No, what color are you gonna paint?
probably not blue.
Not,
Yeah, we may find something a little more subdued than that, but
yeah, I was thinking we should paint them green.
That's the best of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the poles down there are green and that. Paint the doors green.
It's too bad Greg left, maybe you could do green on the building, or the roof that he mentioned, because that would match the rest of
I was thinking a little red.
the thing.
Light it up a little.
The only thing I had, we are, staff has been busy with all of these storms. So, want to give a shout out to staff. They've been doing a good job. And unfortunately, most of the call outs have been overnights or on weekends. I think at this point, everyone is ready for 75 degrees and sunny. I think they've had enough call outs to last them. February was a brutal month for call outs for them in January. So.
Thank
You
you.
have to do this weekend.
Yeah, hopefully, this one so far looks like it's going south. I think we're good with that. We could use a day of not a week of not having anything. Does anyone have anything else for me? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 13, there is no Mara report. Item number 14, police report.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
First item is staffing update. We hired Alex Juarez in January. He's currently in the academy. Today marked the end of the first module in the academy, and they had a test today, and you had to keep a average of 80% on the test, and I'm proud to say he did keep a higher average than 80%, and he is continuing in the academy. Unfortunately, they let 3 or 4 cadets go today, and all of them were attached to police departments that had hired him and were paying him. So it's a tough haul, but our guy's hanging in there and doing well. So that's good to know. There's 4 more modules, I believe, and he has to keep an 80% throughout the entire process. So even in the last module, if he fails, he's out. So it does get a little easier as you go. The hard stuff's in the beginning. So he's doing well. I attached a Crime Watch impact statement to this. This is a service provided by the Crime Watch organization. It's several pages. We don't really need to go through all of it, but there's a couple significant points. Our subscribers has increased approximately 15%. Our visits has increased approximately 20%. So we're chugging along on increasing the amount of people that actually use it and what we're doing with it. So, like I said, it ranks us with other sized organizations in there. It's interesting to look at. The PCCD grant summary, as you know, we applied for a PCCD grant. It was from 22 to 24. They supplied us with new MDTs, new mobile data terminals for all their vehicles. And they also supplied us with an ALPR, which is an automated license plate reader for Maine and Union. We've talked about this before. That grant cycle came to an end December 31st, 2024. The automated license plate reader has been installed and functional. We just got the hot sheets operational through PennDOT. What that means is we can do enforcement at the intersection and we'll get alerts for stolen vehicles, various types of things that we don't have to actually run tags or pull people over. It's an automated system. It's been used quite extensively by us and other police departments. At least once or twice a week, we get a call from police departments investigating child custody issues, robberies. Hey, can you check your license plate reader and see if this car went through? I don't have any success stories for those major crimes. We've used it for hit and runs and other issues within the borough, but I don't yet have a major hot crime for us to report it solved, but it's a work in progress. And just like any other criminal justice system, access to query the license plate readers requires a reason and an audit trail, so it's not being used indiscriminately. The other item I have is I attended an air show update. We had talked about this before also, but just some additional information for us. It's going to be Memorial Day weekend. It's from 12 to 4 p.m. The operational window is till 5 p.m. just in case there's some kind of weather event. The airport will be open while this is occurring, so they'll take breaks between events, and 737 will land from Pittsburgh and disembark while the show is occurring. So the Thursday and Friday before the show, they're doing practice and rehearsal days, so we'll be able to see this going on for a couple days before. 4 main parking areas for the event are all on airport property. They open at 8 in the morning. They're expecting 3,700 vehicles to be parked on the airport property, and they're expecting 15 to 20,000 attendees. And due to the price of the tickets and the limitation of the tickets, they expect pop-up events to occur all throughout this area. Local municipalities are responsible for traffic control points. That'll be my responsibility. They suggested taking advantage of the event and having hold your own events. For example, Londonderry, I think, is closing the golf course and having rental spots up in that area for the show and some food trucks. The only thing they ask is that if you hold some type of an organized event, that if it's gonna impact the traffic plan, you let them know, you let me know, we can then incorporate it into the traffic plan. For example, if Penn State would decide to hold a huge viewing party in their open land, 400 or 500 cars trying to get into their traffic plan would have a huge impact on the overall plan. So, I believe we already received a request for a food truck permit for the Susquehanna Street area for that date. So the idea that there will be pop-up events is going to be a reality and something we should keep in mind so if you hear anything, let me know. We have to be prepared. Are we gonna permit people to park or camp or have picnics in that area for the air show? It's a perfect place to watch it. So that's something we should think about as the event comes closer. They're preparing an incident action plan, which they'll share with us once it's complete. But it will have quite an impact on us for that weekend. So I'll do my best to make sure we're prepared to deal with it, and I'll communicate any changes or anything that comes up on it. That's all I got. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Item number 15, joint venture Veolia. I see no one here. Grace, can you mark that? And number 16 is council. And discussion of the vetoed parking/trailer ordinance.
It's me. It was vetoed.
Actually, I'm looking at you.
Okay.
Tell us
I got nothing.
why.
I think the statement that I amended into the record the night that I vetoed it speaks for itself, but I think that there needs to be some sort of compromise between what your overarching goal is and the effect of it. And furthermore, this is section 260-173 of the zoning ordinance, which in my statement I indicated I thought it had been, I don't remember the exact words I used, but I think I said misinterpreted or represented. I think this is one of the more poorly worded ordinances I've ever read. Jim, would you agree with that?
I would. I mean, it's got like quadruple negative, it's really, trying to pick through it.
The ordinance does, or?
The zoning ordinance, not
Zoning
the borough
ordinance.
ordinance.
What parking of trailers and storage of trailers?
So let me back up. When you guys were gonna pass the trailer ordinance, there was a lot of discussion about how, if somebody has a trailer on the street, we wanna get it off the street, they can move it into their yard. That's not what this says. This creates a general rule. I'm gonna leave out some of the words so it doesn't get watered down, but it basically says this. I'll just use the word trailer. No trailer shall be parked or stored outside. That's the general rule on your property. Then it gives an exception. The exception is, read the first sentence.
Where are you at?
260-173-F1.
Okay.
No trailer, I'm leaving out the words mobile home, both, other similar equipment. So no trailer shall be parked or stored outside. That's the general rule. Then it says, except in your front or side yard for no more than 3 days. That to me doesn't say you can park a trailer in your yard at all, unless it's on a temporary basis in the front or side yard. If that's not what the intention of this ordinance is, then so be it, but that is poorly written, and the way I read it, it says you're not permitted to do it at all in your yard unless it's in your front or side yard on a temporary basis. It creates the general rule in section 1, it gives you the exception in the subsections of A and B. And the general rule says, again, no trailer shall be parked or stored outside except in a residential district in a front or side yard for more than 3 days.
No, I wasn't here when this, I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I would say the beauty of it is you can now create a rule that you think it ought to be. And, I mean, it is terribly written, especially if you read in all the words, but it does add up to that, the literal reading is no parking outside, except in the front, and it may well have been that somebody way back in 2003 or whenever it was trying to say the opposite, and, you know, maybe they wanted
Was
to
that when
be.
this was written?
Yeah, I think,
2003?
well, it goes at least back, yeah, it seems to be from the original, but whenever it was long before anybody here was involved with it. And it's funny because it's, you know, the way, when you read through it, it's inescapable, the literal reading, but
The intent may have
the
been.
intent may have been you're allowed parking backyard, but it doesn't say that, it starts off with.
And Michelle, let me give you the reason that this, since you said you weren't there. When that ordinance, now not the zoning ordinance, the trailer ordinance, when that was on the table here, I received a call, multiple, but one in particular from the lower end of town, Union Street. And the individual asked me to veto the trailer ordinance. And I started asking her, how does it affect you, et cetera. She said that she owned a pontoon boat and a fishing boat. And I asked her about her property. She said that she was told by a prior, not Jason, zoning official, that she was not permitted to have those items in her yard, which piqued my interest because that's not what we were saying at these meetings. And so I said to her, well, if you don't have it in the yard, because you were told you're not allowed, where do you have it? And is it really a big deal down by you because the houses were decimated from the flood, and so there's a lot of parking down there? And she said, she doesn't even have it at her house. And I said, well, where do you have these items? She said, the parking lot on Susquehanna Street. And we were having a good conversation, and I kind of laughed and said, well, why do you do that? And she said, because I don't want to look at them. And I said, well, you've just proven one point that was discussed at this table, that nobody wants to look at them. You yourself own them, and you have all the parking in the world around your house, and you park them all the way down on Susquehanna Street, closer to the baseball field, because you yourself, as the owner, don't want to look at them. However, knowing that some of the decisions at the table were, well, if we ban them from the street, they have the option to go to the yard. When she told me that, I went back and pulled this up and read it, and that's when I asked Mr. Dime his thoughts, because to me, she's correct, that whoever told her this previously is not permitted currently. So I don't think that that out that the Borough Council thought they were giving people actually exists as this is currently written.
So if we understand our intentions and it doesn't match up with the ordinance, we could
You can amend the.
clarify
Yeah.
our intentions here.
Well, and in fact, you
and
can,
then
yeah,
modify the
you
ordinance.
can almost set this aside with a clean slate and say, what do we want it to be? And I would almost say it's kind of a nice thing in that it's so restrictive in that there's no weird arguments to be raised about grandfathering because it was so narrow. So it isn't like, whatever rule you come up with is gonna be more narrow. So it's not like somebody, you know, would be fighting about, well, I'm grandfathered to do something, I think. So you really can approach this with, you know, what does the majority of council want to do? What do you think the rules ought to be? And make a clear rule. It is, if you try to look at that, it'll make your head hurt. It's really hard to read that. And it may well be that somebody didn't mean to have it, you know, the first part under another not or except, and, you know, except, not, except, you go to B and there's another not.
Okay, so then, but we have an ordinance that says one thing, but we have a zoning.
No, we didn't pass the
You
trailer
didn't
ordinance,
pass
it got
it.
vetoed.
Yes, and
No, I'm saying we have an ordinance that says that we can't have motor homes in such
on the street.
On the street.
That's what I'm getting at. we have an ordinance that says that, but does that supersede the zoning?
No, so that ordinance is out on the street, the zoning is the yard. And they really are two separate things.
Okay.
But it is true, if you can't park here, do you wanna park here, that you could say you can't park in either place, you can park in both places.
Well, this mentions motorhome as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
Yeah, you can't park a motorhome in the yard.
But regulating out on the street doesn't supersede, and vice versa. You know, the zoning doesn't regulate the street.
Okay.
The parking rules on the street don't change the zoning. Of course, they, in the real world, interplay with one another in terms of, if I wanna park something, what do I do with it, what am I allowed to do with it? But one doesn't overrule the other, the two, work in tandem.
So Jim, are you suggesting we go through this, or we put this aside?
Yeah, it's so terribly written, but forget that and just think, what do you want the rule to be?
Uh-huh.
And talk, have input from the codes department, what works, what doesn't work, all those things, and it's good, obviously. But I wouldn't try to struggle with reading that, or try to figure out what did somebody mean decades ago,
Right.
because it's really, it's bad.
Well,
and then
I think what we thought we were saying, here, I understand, now it doesn't tee up, but we thought we understood that you could park a trailer in your driveway and a trailer in your backyard.
Yeah,
Isn't that?
that's what we thought, that's what we thought.
And if you wanted to park something on the street, it had to be attached to a vehicle. So that was what we were, and then it came up that, well, businesses might have more trailers than they can, accommodate in their backyard. And I think, as we were talking more about it, businesses may just have to take care of their business equipment outside of the two pieces they can fit in their own personal yard. That we didn't feel so responsible to accommodate multiple trailers on a business. We have a lot of small businesses in Middletown, and they don't get any special accommodation for their business expenses and needs. So we were thinking they might just have to make some decisions based on their business. But if you only have two trailers and you want to put your business trailers, one in your driveway and one in your backyard, you don't want boats on the
My thought was,
street.
if you could get two in the yard, then,
At least that's,
I had said that to you too.
well, one in the driveway and one in the yard. You're suggesting one in the driveway and two in the yard if it can accommodate?
Yeah, I mean, the other weird thing here is, and why you're thinking they probably did intend something else, is it doesn't address the backyard. So it's talking about putting things for 3 days in the front yard and the side yard, which is counterintuitive. You would think
The more I,
they may have meant you can put things longer term in the back, but it doesn't say that. It starts off with you can't park.
Well,
in the-
again, you said we weren't, we
Yeah,
weren't gonna look at
that's
this,
what I'm
so
saying. I
whatever.
think this needs,
I
Yeah, but
think
you do need-
somewhere
you
it
do need
says
to have
the
that in the
yard if it
back.
has street,
no,
if it has street access, right?
you also need,
that's, you're up above the rear yard and street, and that's with, that's parking. So there's a difference between storage and parking. So when you drive your car home, you're parking it. When you put the camper there, I'll use it next time, in a couple of months or whatever, that's storage.
And our zoning ordinance doesn't have a definition for storage, and it should.
It could, but I mean, storage is storage. I mean, it's also got a, Webster's dictionary meaning.
Yeah, but when you start saying storage for no more than 3 days, and some things you might want to explain that in your definition.
You can, but there's also a downside of over defining it, what's not really a term of art necessarily. Now, if you wanna put a special rule around what storage is, you could, but I don't know that.
I know you're saying that we should not focus on this. However, it needs to be said that if you are seeking to reintroduce the trailer ordinance, you do have to address this. Because if Mr. Lister and Ms. Lloyd would suddenly change their mind and override the veto, because I'll veto it again if you do the same exact ordinance, and they override it, you still can't park in the yard for this. So you're gonna have to amend this ordinance. And I will veto this one too, because I don't think that's the answer.
Yeah, so I didn't mean we shouldn't address, I'm saying we should address it. What I'm saying is, I wouldn't get caught up in trying to move these existing words around. I would start with, thinking about where do you wanna park it, then we'll write the word, but don't.
This to me says that they didn't want you to park a trailer in your yard unless you were doing a construction project and you needed it for 3 days and you could stick it in the front or side yard so you could accomplish your task. That's what this says. You and I had a couple conversations about this when the trailer ordinance was coming up. You, by passing that trailer ordinance, you were attempting to do, and you had a lot of people upset in the public. And two, I think you were creating a separate problem that, in my opinion, actually would be worse. Because if you take these 128 per rich trailers off the street and stick them in the yards, you are destroying the look of this town. Can you imagine, in the third ward, as an example, there's big yards, maybe it's not as noticeable. You have people in my area sticking a trailer in their yard. Let me back up one step. What is the gripe about the 128 trailers on the street? It's that they don't move, and that people have junk on them, and they sit there, and they rust, and they look like hell sitting on the street.
And they're
So-
not safe.
And they're not safe. So now you're gonna take them from the street, you're gonna stick them in the yard, and guess what's gonna happen? They're not gonna move from the yard. So now I, as a neighbor, or any other person in close proximity to my neighbors, gets to sit on their deck or their patio in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, look over to the neighbor's yard, see a rusty trailer in the yard with a dead rectangle of grass beneath it, and groundhogs and opossums and all the crap stacked up on top of it. And it's not gonna move from there, because they didn't move it from the street either. I think that makes the town look absolutely horrible. So, to me, the solution, in my opinion, is valid, because I am the one that vetoed it, and you have to consider it, considering you're gonna have to fix this too. I'm not in favor of you putting anything in the yard. If they have a driveway, I don't care how many you put in the driveway. Do what you want to do. It's a driveway. But sticking a trailer in the yard, in a grass area, like it's a piece of play equipment, that's subpar, in my opinion. That's exactly what's gonna happen, because they sit.
So Jim, you're saying a driveway is okay because it's surface,
Right.
it's not going to sit, it's,
Yeah, I know people that have driveways with trailers in them. I don't see an issue with that at all. It's your driveway. You wanna park a trailer with a four-wheeler on it? You wanna park your landscaping trailer? I don't care. But taking trailers and sticking them in people's yards, just in the middle of grass, I mean, that's not what I think we're fighting for in this town. And you're gonna invite, I mean, think of how many animals you could get just trying to live under people's sheds. You're just creating another nuisance in the yard. And it's gonna sit there and rust, the tires are gonna deflate. And like I said, you have the dead spur of grass, just picture that for a moment. I know what you're trying to solve. For the public, I don't hide behind what I think about this situation. I openly admit that I think these trailers do cause a problem. For example, the business ones, I get it. You know, people in a residential neighborhood, someone's running a business, they have 5 trailers and they're dropping them in the street. They're running a business and they're taking up residential parking spots. I get it. I get that there's an issue, but that is not the solution. The solution is something that I tried to bring up multiple meetings ago about, can we offer these people somewhere to go with them rather than force them to go to a storage facility? Can we do something to help them while still accomplishing the goal?
The reason I bring up the definition of storage, I know that municipalities do that, and they will define it, because if you ask anybody in town who may be storing one in the yard now, the definition of storage is no more than 2 days, it's for the whole winter. You know, until they're ready to pull their boat out in the spring, it's back there. And so their storage is, they're thinking 6 months. So, the reason I bring that up also is, the, RVs, not the motorhomes, but the pull-behind. If you want to allow it in the driveway, you might even want to consider that, because some people will put a RV in a driveway, and it will become an accessory structure in that driveway forever. Not everybody, but somebody. If they just don't move much.
We got a guy down on the State Street that puts that. He puts
So
that.
my point was that, and know it happens, I don't want to single anybody out, but it's something you could consider when you rewrite this thing. I think you better look at the whole thing on the property, the trailers, and all kinds of things. And how you want to write it. Because there are some people who will have a trailer in their driveway, and they might pull it out every day. Now, maybe they are using it for their job, but it moves quite frequently.
And the fact that Mr. Bruskevich was able to count 120 trailers tells you they don't move too often, for the ones that are not business related.
I have given some thought about the idea of relief for people who are pinched by any ordinance change we make, although we still haven't made any final decisions. And for me, it's people who have a small utility trailer and they don't have a driveway, nor do they have a, well, for now, backyard, but let's just say they don't have a driveway. So for that, I know we have areas in town, down by you, where there could be, and I know we've taken a look at it, where we could probably park some trailers on the street. I'm not sure I can imagine creating parking lots, spending budget money to create parking lots that then we have to pay for and manage and clean and maintain and,
Why not? You're spending all the money for these parks and stuff. Why can't you have one area down in the floodplain somewhere, down in that area? Unless there's gonna be a liability, which Jim can address that, for having a public area.
I have something to say.
Yeah.
Is this public comment?
No.
Okay. I know it's a stretch, but I want to know if anybody on this board has made any phone calls. So currently in our borough, there is at least 200 parking spaces. It's paved, it's gated, there's lights, and it's surveillance, and it's not being used. And it's at the entrance. Has anybody thought about, and I know it's a stretch, but has anybody thought about picking up the phone, calling a representative, calling Amtrak, calling PennDOT, saying, hey, you've got 200 some spaces for overflow parking, you've never used it, there's never been a car in it. What kind of deal can we do with you to rent these spaces on a month-to-month basis so you could get it back if you wanted to, anytime you wanted? It's already paved, it's gated, it's lit, it's surveillance, and it's nothing new. We could do, hey, if you let us use it, we'll make sure that we plow and salt the whole entire parking lot in exchange.
Where's this at, over here?
Right
by
at
the train.
the train station. And Matt Eckert called me before that meeting, and he was really upset, and him and I spoke, and, you know, I said, what? I said, this is an idea, Matt, it was my idea. I said, why don't you ask council about it? Has anybody since then picked up the phone and called anybody? No? Just say, it's there, already done, not being used.
I will say that it is used, because I couldn't even get on a train, this past week, when I was trying to go to Philadelphia, and that entire parking lot was full.
Both sides.
Yeah.
To the left,
Yeah, but over the holidays, they were in the other side too.
The parking lot close to,
On the holiday season, they were in more than that main parking lot in front of the building.
I personally, you know, I've been looking since this topic has come up, every time I've driven past there. It's not been months, it's not been years, I've looked over. I have never once seen a car over there. But has anybody picked up the phone and called and say, does it ever get used? Do you have 50
Did you?
spaces? No, I haven't.
Why not?
Well, there you have it. Why not?
Maybe I haven't.
We haven't,
Last
hasn't
time-
done it because
You said it was your idea, so.
it wasn't discussed as a potential option by council, that they were in favor and they were looking at some other things. But, if council wants us to research, I think Jason might have contact with somebody there, we can look and we can see what they have to say. Council wants us to do that, but I'll tell you this, their parking spaces aren't paved, the lines aren't lined long enough for longer trailers. Cars will stick out. On some of them, they get a 12 or 16 footer.
And I'm not saying it works for, I'm not saying boats. I'm not saying it works, but you said the council who sketched kind of 160 some trailers was that, just for a single axle 6x12 trailer. I mean, that's, I'd say there's more of those in the borough than there is pontoon boats and. I'm not saying it's a perfect idea. This is not an easy solution. Nobody has a magic wand sitting here. It's just an idea. We're talking about creating and paving and making stuff. There's a lot right there. A simple phone call. For the record, Mayor, I want to make sure I understand your position. You are not in favor of any trailers on the street or in the yards in the borough, is that correct?
No, that's good.
So if council writes an ordinance that prohibits trailers in the yards and then, or changes the zoning for that and then doesn't have an ordinance prohibiting trailers, you won't veto it?
If the council changes the zoning ordinance to say clearer than it is, that the trailers are not allowed in the yards, and then does a borough ordinance that says what?
That trailers are prohibited on the roads unless attached to a vehicle? You wouldn't?
No, because if you read my veto statement that was admitted into the record, my gripe was not only the yard issue. My other gripe was that you have residents coming here and they never come here, and also on Facebook and also via personal communication with me, that are not happy with a blanket rule like that. That's why I called Madam President. I also asked to speak with the Vice President to say, in the spirit of togetherness and compromise, we need to figure something out. The yard issue is a second issue. The first issue is, I'm not in favor of just banning everything without figuring out a solution to try to accommodate our town. That's my position.
But you're saying part of the solution is people can use their driveway.
I don't have a problem with the driveway.
See?
Well, I have a question. All these people that are using their yards now, if this ordinance that I'm looking at, it's not right, what happens there?
Well, they're currently in violation of that
Yeah, they're in violation of the zoning.
ordinance, of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, but
Of the zoning.
does that mean they're gonna have to move? That
I mean,
doesn't seem right.
Well, why? The ordinance as it's written has been clear for the last 30 years.
Well, they would
Well,
be in
that's not-
violation of the zoning thing, but they would not be in violation of the ordinance.
What does it say?
Of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
They'd be in violation of the zoning
Fucking
ordinance,
ordinance.
which is, as we discussed, yeah, I use the word clear, that was the right word. But by the wording that's there, it's a violation of
They'd be in
zoning.
violation of one, but not in violation of the other.
There is no other. What's the other ordinance you're talking about?
The one, wait a minute.
We didn't pass the trailer
Yeah,
ordinance.
there
It
is
doesn't
no
exist.
ordinance.
No, the one, wait a minute.
I'm talking about the RV.
Yeah, the RV one.
Size, those had to do with size of trailers, they limited the size that could be on the streets,
Yeah,
the length, the width.
that one they'd be okay with.
No.
Wait a minute, am I right or wrong about that?
You can confuse, I understand, because it is a little bit confusing, because we're talking about two different things, three different things.
Right.
You're going to a previous ordinance that dealt with large trailers and motor homes and trucks parked on the street.
Right.
That ordinance, you're thinking, cleaned that up and took the large stuff off the street. But it didn't
Right.
take trailers or boats off the street, or even small RVs off
Right.
street, but up campers. So now, this latest ordinance is looking to take all trailers off the street unless they're hitched to a vehicle. And that got beat. And he's saying he beaten it because there's ambiguity in the current zoning ordinance that has to do with trailers in yards. And clear to Jim the intent of what it says, the way it's written, but also not poorly written, but what is clear, that a number of residents in town think it's clear that they're allowed to have their boat in their backyard or their trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
what
it's been
I'm
that way for
asking.
many years.
Yeah, I thought that,
So to them, it would be a shock.
It might be a shock.
but, so everybody's in violation that has one.
Unless they've had it there for only 3 days.
Or unless you change the, I mean, you guys
Unless
control
you
the
allow
rules.
something to be parked in the backyard.
So maybe you can all, who want to put their ideas on the paper as far as what we'll see, we can compare notes about it.
Yeah.
At the next meeting,
We could do that.
Yeah.
because this goes can go a lot of different ways, and maybe what you're for. For anything in the backyard, for controlling it if it is, or you know in the backyard, maybe you could make check boxes like that.
Is Mr. Lee still on there?
Yes.
I mean, he was not in favor of the trailer ordinance. Does he have any thoughts on this?
Pat, did you hear that?
Yep, I hear you, Bob. Yep. Yeah, I wasn't in favor of the trailer ordinance. The biggest reason was just because there was no give to the residents. So I love the discussion that Ian just brought up, or, even talking about other parking locations in our borough that we could, start being creative and offer some other solutions. I side with Jim as well with the yards, and I'm definitely not in favor of allowing more access on people's yard, but I just don't think that's gonna be a good look either. So, I'm certainly willing to revisit it though, because I think it is an issue.
Let's get some stuff together for next workshop.
For the next workshop?
Maybe we could, come up with some kind of checklist that we could circulate to council people, for this, for that, and then add your comments too, for something we didn't think of, we could put in.
Okay.
That's separate.
Any other council discussion? Now is the time for public comment, general public comment.
I'm going to apologize in advance for doing this to you, but I would like to address the Grandview Parking District. Back in 2008, commuting students from Penn State were parking along Wharton Avenue and blocking people's driveways and up onto West Roosevelt. And in one case, the student thought he had a resident's work schedule figured out, and he parked in their driveway, and the gentleman came home from work early to find a car in his driveway. So there was an ordinance written. And one of the things which now, after 2008, many of the signs, I counted 50-some signs, about 10% of those signs the lettering is completely gone. You can't read it, it's just a sign on a post. Then subsequent to that, there was two gentlemen living in the apartment complex on North Spring Street that drove tractor trailer, and they were parking their truck on Grandview Avenue. So there was a second ordinance passed and that said that they couldn't park there. But they included it in the entire Grandview Parking District, which is Wharton Avenue, West Roosevelt, Catherine Spring, and Grandview Avenue. So those trucks haven't been there for years. And the truck parking, and it lists a whole slew of RVs, trailers. The signs for that are only posted, I think, on Grandview and part of West Roosevelt. The rest of it was never posted. The next thing is that we were issued a sticker we were supposed to put on the dash of our car if we were parking on the street. And from 2008, I don't know, about 8 or 9 years later, an overzealous police officer at 2 o'clock in the morning came through and tagged every car that was on the street that didn't have the sign or the placard posted. Fortunately, those fines went away. But now, in the parking district, there's probably been 10 or 12 houses that have been bought and sold, and the people there have no idea that they're living in the Grandview Parking District, so they've not gone and gotten the appropriate placard, which the borough manager is supposed to issue according to the ordinance. So I guess my question to you folks is, can that be surveyed, number one? Do we want to spend the money to replace the signs? Because with the additional parking at Penn State, I think most of that problem has gone away. Not 100%. There's still some people that park on Wharton down slightly past Catherine Street. The second thing, if the ordinance, if it wants to be enforced, somehow people have got to know when they buy a house in that district that they're supposed to go see the borough manager, get the placard, and post it on the car. And thirdly, the signs that are illegible, do you want to spend the money to replace them, or do you want to amend the ordinance? And lastly, if the entire Grandview Parking District is under this parking of no trucks, which it also includes trailers, which you folks just discussed, the entire parking district is not placarded to show no truck parking. So,
Mr. Whelan, the student issue and the truck issue has dwindled significantly.
yes, I think the two gentlemen that drove truck, that ordinance was passed after this one, but I don't think there's been a truck parked up there in 10 years.
So would it make sense just to eliminate, instead of replacing all the signs?
Yeah, he brings up a good point. One of the difficulties with something like permanent parking is what Mr. Whelan just said, that sometimes houses sell without even being a sign put in the yard. And, you know, we're always challenged even with the tax code and the personal taxes, trying to, and one way we do track them is with the electric accounts, because other than that, we don't get notified when people buy homes.
Right.
So, you know, we'd have to set up some system of, you know, our kind of like the state a little bit, our electric billing system is a little archaic. It dates way back to 2003 or so. And it can only do certain things, and everything else then becomes manual. So the idea of being able to let people know, hey, you just bought a house and you need to know this, it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. And I agree, you know, people when they buy a house, the first thing they don't do is go looking at brewers, what I need to know.
Yeah.
So the main thing with these signs should probably be our biggest, we're gonna continue to get good signs there that stand out, that they see those signs and fall.
See, the other thing, and I lived through this, but the congestion that was caused by the community students at Penn State never came past Spring Street. So the portion of Wharton, West Roosevelt, and Grandview they weren't gonna walk that far. They had to, at that time, it was $75 to park on campus. I don't know what it is today, but it was, I can remember talking at the time that it seemed like they kind of overdid the ordinance. But
Well, if we would, I'm just trying to, thank you, this is good to know. If we were going to stick with the ordinance, we would have to replace the signs, is what you're saying.
yeah,
And does that mean we would just take off the sign
Mhm.
part and keep
yeah. Yeah, the posts are no problem.
the post? So what if I mean, essentially, people don't even know we have an ordinance because no one can read the sign. I'm just trying to follow your.
In certain areas, that's correct.
So, if nobody knows we have an ordinance and they're not getting their permits to park, can we conclude that there is no longer a problem? Because we're not hearing from residents that say, I can't park.
I don't think
There's
that's entirely
student
true. I
parking.
think Grace still gets people coming and getting the permits from the main area.
Right. Well, they're getting permits.
What I'm saying is they know that there's permanent parking. I think where Ellen said, if they don't know there's permanent parking, there's no problem, why just get rid of it? Some people are.
They still come.
If
But
they
I
get their
guess-
permit, but they're not coming to get the permit saying, we have a major parking problem, they're getting the permit because they're supposed to get one by law.
But maybe if they're closer to the campus, if they all go away, maybe they will have a problem. Yeah, we don't know. Where
Yeah.
Jim lives, he's saying he's never had a problem, is it?
No.
Union Street.
Right.
The problem used to be down there near.
It was from
Right,
Catherine,
that's
it was
Catherine.
from Catherine Street over.
Right, but you heard what he said, the guy went to work, and then a kid went and parked in his driveway, you know,
Huh.
yeah.
So, in any event, with this whole trailer thing, we're gonna have to look at that code as well, because I believe when I looked at it, you know, the permit for those residents is good for the trailer in front of that.
Okay.
All right,
Then we'll review that one also.
I hate to pile on you, but
Well, parking is, you know, something we need to work on.
We just get the signs.
Is there any other public comment?
Yeah, most of the signs have been replaced already. I'll verify that tomorrow driving through, but a number of them have been replaced, probably at least 15 or 20 of them. So I'll verify that tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Continue to do that, keep ordering signs to replace them? Matt, are those signs that you have on hand, or are you ordering them to replace?
They've been replaced.
They've been replaced.
You said 16 of them.
I don't remember how many ordered. We have, at last count, we have 20 different styles of no parking signs in it. We have a lot
What I'm
of,
getting at is, do you want Matt to continue to spend money on it when you haven't made a decision on this?
Wait, you said they were already replaced,
Not all of
right?
them.
I'll verify, most of them have been replaced.
Yeah, most of them.
However, if there's more that need to be replaced, let's not, if we're rethinking it, I think is the point, yeah.
I think you should just go ahead and replace them.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we will be going to executive session, and I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion adjourned. I mean, meeting adjourned.
You don't need me to do that.
Jenny.
All right, guys.